Level 1, the nobody. You arrive in Los Angeles on a Tuesday in February with $1,400 in a checking account, a headshot you paid $300 for in your hometown, and a certainty so irrational it should embarrass you. It doesn't. You are going to be a movie star. You've believed this since you were 9 years old, performing in your bedroom mirror, accepting imaginary Oscars from imaginary crowds. The belief feels less like ambition and more like memory, a future you're simply returning to. The city doesn't care. Los Angeles has eaten 10,000 people with that same look in their eyes. The apartment you find is in Van Nuys, 40 minutes from anything that matters. You share it with 2 other actors who are also waiters. You become a waiter too. The restaurant is in West Hollywood, close enough to industry that you occasionally pour water for people who could change your life, people who look through you like you're made of glass. You submit your headshot to every casting director in town. You hear nothing. You submit again. Nothing. You do student films for free, working 14-hour days for the experience, for the footage, for the reel nobody is asking to see yet. You take an acting class on Melrose taught by a man who was almost famous in the early 90s and has been teaching ever since, mining his proximity to success for a living. You pay $400 a month for it. It is, despite everything, the best money you spend. 6 months pass, then a year. Your parents ask carefully worded questions about backup plans. You don't have a backup plan. A backup plan would mean you don't believe. And if you don't believe, there's no reason to be here, eating shift meals in a restaurant kitchen, waiting for a phone that won't ring. Level 2, the student. You find a theater company in Silver Lake, a small black box that seats 80 people, run by a director named Marlowe who has tremendous talent and no money, and a ferocious belief that theater can still matter. You audition 4 times before she casts you. The role is small. You don't care. You're on a real stage, doing real work, in front of real audiences who chose to be there. The play runs 6 weekends. You earn nothing. But Marlowe teaches you something no class has. She teaches you to stop performing and start living. There's a difference, and it's the difference between an actor and a movie star, though you don't know that yet. She makes you do a scene 60 times, not to get it right, but to get past right, to find the place where you've forgotten you're doing a scene at all. You do 4 productions with the company over 2 years. The audiences grow from 80 to 120. A critic from an alternative weekly calls your performance in the 3rd show alive in a way most stage work refuses to be. You screenshot it. You send it to your mother. You read it on bad nights when rejection starts to feel like verdict. A casting assistant attends your 4th show. She works for a mid-level commercial casting director. You book a Toyota commercial. It pays $12,000. You pay 3 months of rent in a single check for the first time in your life and stand at the kitchen counter for a long time holding the deposit confirmation on your phone. Level 3, the day player. The commercial leads to a theatrical agent, not a big one, not the kind whose name means anything, but a woman named Sandra, who believes in you specifically and submits you aggressively and returns your calls within 2 hours, which in this industry is an act of profound professional love. She gets you into rooms. The rooms reject you. She gets you into more rooms, more rejection. You book your first television role, 2 lines in a CBS procedural, a detective who tells the lead character the victim's estimated time of death. You rehearse those 2 lines for 3 days. You explore every possible reading, flat, clipped, weary, mechanical, human. On set, you deliver them in a single take. The director says, "That's the one," without looking up from his phone. Your contribution to the episode is over in 4 minutes. You watch the episode when it airs. You're on screen for 11 seconds. You can see the work in your eyes, the choices you made, the life you put behind the words. Nobody watching can see it. Not at this level. Not in 11 seconds in a scene you don't anchor. But it's there, and you know it's there, and knowing is what keeps you moving. More day player roles accumulate over the next 18 months. A paramedic, a suspect in an interrogation room who turns out to be innocent, a soldier with 2 lines in a war film. None of them have surnames. You are credited as Detective Number 2 and Soldier and Emergency Responder. You exist at the edges of other people's stories, doing your job, going home, waiting for the story that will finally be yours. Level 4, the breakthrough. The script arrives through Sandra on a Wednesday. She calls it small but extraordinary, which is her highest form of praise. No budget, a first-time director named Grace Park, 19 days shooting in Bakersfield in August. The role is a young man caring for his terminally ill father while concealing a devastating secret. There are long silences, almost no action. The entire film rests on whether an audience can watch your face for 90 minutes and find a world there. You take it without negotiating. You spend 3 months preparing, hospice facilities, waiting rooms, everything written about grief and the particular silence that fills a house when death has already moved in. You find the character not by building him, but by stripping yourself down until there's nowhere left to hide. The shoot is brutal. 19 days in 106-degree heat, emotionally naked in every scene. Grace doesn't direct you so much as create conditions in which you can break. You go home each night too depleted to eat. The film premieres at Sundance. You sit in the back row, too nervous to watch. You hear the silence in the room. Not the absence of engagement, but its opposite. The held breath quiet of an audience that has forgotten they're watching a film. The standing ovation lasts 4 minutes. Grace is crying. You are not. You feel strangely calm, the way people feel after surviving something serious. Within 48 hours, every major agency in Hollywood has called Sandra. Your phone contains messages from actors you grew up watching. A director whose films you have memorized texts you 3 words. I saw it. Extraordinary. You are discovered. The word is wrong because you were always there, but the world has finally looked in the right direction. Level 5, the rising star. The next 2 years are a controlled sprint. You sign with a major agency, a glass tower in Century City where people move with the precision of those who believe time is literally currency. Your new agent, David, tells you the plan. 1 prestige film, 1 studio film, 1 awards campaign, a triangle. You build a career in triangles, he says, never in straight lines. You follow the triangle. A period drama shoots in Prague for 4 months. A thriller costing $90 million requires a different kind of preparation. Running, jumping, looking convincingly terrified in ways that are purely physical. You do both well. The prestige film earns you a Golden Globe nomination. You don't win. The man who wins has been doing this for 40 years and deserves it completely and gives a speech that makes you cry. The nomination changes the mathematics of your life. Your quote doubles, then doubles again. Invitations arrive to things you didn't know were things. Charity galas, fashion weeks, a private dinner at the home of a director whose filmography you consider sacred. You go. You are charming. You are interesting. You are also performing in a way you didn't expect, performing the version of yourself the world has decided you are. Not entirely different from the real version, not entirely the same either. You start to notice the gap. The person who shows up at the premiere versus the person who drives home afterward. You tell yourself it will close when you find the right role. Level 6, the franchise. The offer arrives through David with a solemnity that tells you this is different. A major studio, a superhero franchise, 4 films already greenlit, a 10-year universe roadmap, a merchandising operation that dwarfs the film budgets. The contract is for 5 pictures. The number attached to it is so large you read it 3 times to make sure you haven't misplaced a decimal. You say yes. Everyone tells you this is the right decision. Your agent, your manager, your business manager, who has started attending meetings. The only person who hesitates is your acting teacher from the Melrose class, who emails you a single line. Make sure you can find your way back. The first film shoots for 7 months across 4 countries, 16 weeks in a motion capture suit, performing in a gray room against tennis balls on sticks, projecting emotion onto nothing. You are brilliant at it. The character works. The film opens on a Friday and earns $280 million in its first weekend. By Monday, your face is on buses in 43 countries. Children in Tokyo and Sao Paulo and Lagos know your name. The second film arrives before you've finished promoting the first. Then the third. The schedule is relentless, designed not for the story, but for the release calendar. The studio has a slot. You are what fills the slot. The distinction between you and the character erodes in the public imagination. Interviewers address you by his name. Children run toward you on the street reaching for a superhero who doesn't exist. You smile and sign things and pose for photographs while something quiet inside you does the math. You are not yet the most famous person in the world. The difference is smaller than you'd think. Level 7. The most famous person alive. There is a morning. You pinpoint it later, though it could have been any of 100 mornings, when you realize you are no longer a person who has become famous. You are famous the way mountains are tall, simply the condition of your existence, indistinguishable from the thing itself. Your quote is $25 million per film, then $30 million. Then the number stops being stated directly and becomes a series of conversations in rooms you no longer attend. You have a publicist, a manager, an agent, an entertainment lawyer, a business manager, 2 assistants, a security detail, and a scheduling coordinator whose sole job is to prevent your time from being accessed by the wrong people. You have become, without designing it, an organization. You cannot go to a grocery store. This is not a figure of speech. You tested it once, sent an assistant to time how long before the calls started. 11 minutes from entering the store to the first TMZ tip. You are no longer a person who exists in casual proximity to the public. You are an event. Every appearance planned, contained, managed. The alternative is disappearing completely, which you have also tried, and which generates its own kind of event. The old friendships become archaeological. The people from before, the waiting tables, the student films, the shift meals, they're still there. The calls are still warm. But the shared vocabulary is gone. They speak the language of callbacks and pilot season. You speak the language of global release strategies and franchise obligations. A relationship ends. The person says they lost you to something they couldn't compete with. When you ask what, they say the mirror. You think about that for a long time. Level 8. The machine. At some point between the 4th and 5th franchise films, without any single decision you can name, you become a brand. Not a celebrity, not a star, not even an icon, a brand, with the full industrial apparatus that word implies. Licensing deals, a production company, a fragrance campaign your manager calls a legitimate artistic collaboration, and that your acting teacher, when you tell him, greets with a silence loud enough to classify. Your name attached to a project affects its financing. Your name removed from a project can collapse it. You didn't ask for this power and don't fully understand it and mostly experience it as weight. Every role you decline generates a think piece. Every role you accept generates a think piece. You are placed on lists, most powerful, most bankable, most influential. And the lists feel like a cage built from the outside to contain something the world has decided it owns. There are things you sign off on that you don't fully read, in meetings attended by people whose names you learn and forget. You trust the arrangements are appropriate because the people around you say they are, and because understanding them fully would require an attention you cannot sustain while also making films. You are aware this is the mechanism through which people who are not you become very wealthy on your behalf. The alternative, reading everything, attending every meeting, is a full-time job that would require you to stop doing the thing you came here to do. The franchise ends with the 5th film. The studio throws a party. There are speeches about legacy and generations of children and what the character meant. Your speech takes 45 minutes to write because every word is a negotiation between the public version of yourself and the private one. You've been making that negotiation so long you've forgotten which version started talking first. Level 9. The Reckoning. You are 41 years old. You have made 27 films. You have an Oscar that sits on a shelf in your house in the hills above Los Feliz. And when you look at it, you feel something you eventually identify as gratitude mixed with a grief you can't fully source. You go back to the Black Box Theater in Silver Lake. Marlo is still there, aged in the particular way of people who have spent their lives doing difficult creative work for insufficient money. Lines in her face, something galvanized behind her eyes. She lets you watch a rehearsal. You sit in the back row in a baseball cap. The actors on stage are 25, making choices that are sometimes wrong and sometimes startling and entirely real. You feel something stir behind your sternum that you haven't felt in longer than you can calculate. You call Grace Park. She's making her fourth film, still independent, still uncompromising, still underfunded. You tell her you want to work together again. She asks what you want to do. You say something small. She says everything I make is small. You say I know. That's why I'm calling. The film costs $4 million. 21 days in rural Georgia. No stunts, no effects, no global release strategy. A quiet story about a man who has spent so long being something for other people that he's genuinely forgotten who he was before. The character's name is different from yours. The parallels are not subtle. It premieres at Cannes. A critic writes that you've done the difficult thing almost no actor at your level manages. Disappeared entirely into someone else while remaining utterly specific. You read it alone in your hotel room and sit for a long time in the particular silence of a person who has been accurately seen. Level 10, The Legend. You are 56. You have made 41 films. The franchise children are adults now, the ones who ran toward you in airports reaching for a character that no longer exists. They send you messages sometimes, telling you what the films meant when they were small. You read everyone. You respond to more than your team thinks is advisable. You still work. Choosier now, which means less. Which means each project carries more weight. Which means the work is better than it has ever been. The young directors who approach you grew up watching you. There is something vertiginous about this, being someone's reason for believing cinema could do something. You try to deserve it. Some days you succeed. The acting teacher from Melrose died 7 years ago. Marlo retired. Sandra moved back to Ohio. The restaurant in West Hollywood is a juice bar. The apartment in Van Nuys was torn down. The physical infrastructure of the person who arrived here with $400 and a headshot has been replaced so thoroughly that you could drive to every address and find nothing you recognize. What remains is the work. 3 or 4 films that will continue being watched after you've stopped being a person who exists. That's the strange mercy of film. It preserves. Future strangers will feel the thing you put into it. They won't know about the brand partnerships or the failed relationship or the gap between your public and private self. They'll see the work. That will be enough. Somewhere tonight, a flight is landing at LAX. Someone on it has $1,400 and a certainty so irrational it should embarrass them. It doesn't. You were that person. The city holds them now, the way it once held you. The cycle continues. It always does.